Welcome to today's 5-minute Bible study in the book of Daniel. We're now ready to begin Daniel chapter 6, which contains the famous story of Daniel in the den of lions. Now, when we get into chapter 6, we're moving out of the Babylonian reign. Remember, the Babylonian Empire came to an end in chapter 5, and we're moving into the reign of the Persian Empire. The second great empire of that vision, Nebuchadnezzar had back in chapter 2. You remember he saw the 4 different kingdoms? The first kingdom was his own, the Babylonian kingdom. The second kingdom was that of the Medes and the Persians. That now comes into play in chapter 6. For the Persians swept away Babylon and established their own empire. Now, you may have one lingering question from chapter 5. Remember that after Daniel had told Belshazzar God's judgment upon him was at hand, he was numbered, he was weighed and found wanting, and his kingdom was divided and destroyed. And the chapter ended by simply saying, in the very night, Belshazzar died. You may wonder, how did the fall come so quickly? You remember that I told you Babylon was a well-fortified city. The walls were strong, the walls were high. How in the world did the Persians get inside the walls of Babylon to cause their collapse in one night? It would seem like they would have to engage in a siege of months or even years if they could ever breach the walls and get in. You remember Belshazzar had felt pretty secure. Well, historically, we know what happened. Indeed, Babylon fell in one night. They fell quickly, really without even a fight. What happened? How did the Persians get inside Babylon, take the capital, destroy the empire, and kill Belshazzar? How did it happen? Well, the Greek historian Herodotus tells us. He's an ancient historian who wrote of the Greek and Persian wars that came later. And he tells exactly how Cyrus the king of Persia, the emperor of Persia, conquered Babylon. Now, Babylon, the city, was a great city, and it sat on the Euphrates River. It actually sat astride the Euphrates River. The wall, as massive as it was, as well fortified as it was, the wall actually stretched across the river, providing an entry point through the river. However, the river was strong. There was no way an army could come underneath the walls where the river flowed through. So they thought. Herodotus tells us that Cyrus figured out a way to temporarily dam up the river and to temporarily divert the Euphrates River in its normal flow. And once he had diverted the water, you had a dry riverbed through which the soldiers could march in. The Babylonians were completely caught off guard, and the Persians marched through the dry riverbed into the city and conquered the city immediately. In truth, Babylon fell without a fight, and the Babylonian Empire was over. Belshazzar's life came to an end, just as Daniel had said it would. God's judgment is always certain. We may not know how his plans will unfold, but when God pronounces judgment, it will come. So at the end of chapter 5, the Babylonian Empire comes to an end. Now, Daniel's been a part of that empire for a long time. Remember, he came to Babylon in the year 605 BC as a young man. The year is now 539 BC. He's still there, and now he becomes part of the Persian Empire. But as we move into chapter 6, we find that the Persians immediately see his quality. Notice how the chapter begins, chapter 6, that is. It pleased Darius to appoint 120 satraps to rule throughout his kingdom, with 3 administrators over them, one of whom was Daniel. Even though Daniel had been an advisor to the king of Babylon, the Persians recognized his great value. And though he was an old man now, they appointed him one of the 3 chief administrators over the affairs of what is now the Persian administration of Babylon and all of its territory. So once again, Daniel finds himself in a high position of influence with the king, of advising the king. Once again, he is God's ambassador in a pagan situation. Only now it's in the Persian Empire rather than the Babylonian Empire. This sets the scene for what is to follow. One more question you may be asking is, who was Darius? It says that Darius took the kingdom at the end of chapter 5. And it says that Darius appointed Daniel at the first of chapter 6. Who is Darius? We know from history that Cyrus was the emperor, the king, the leader of the Persian Empire. It was Cyrus, we know, who conquered Babylon. And later on, of course, it's going to be Cyrus whom God uses to allow the Jews in exile to return to Jerusalem if they so wish. So who is this Darius? For a long time, critical scholars said, well, he didn't exist. The Bible just made him up. But also those same critical scholars for years said that Belshazzar of chapter 5 did not exist. The Bible just made him up. However, recent archaeological finds in the last century have shown that Belshazzar indeed did exist. He was the son, as I told you, of Nabonidus and the last king of Babylon. So we also know that Darius did exist, but who was he? Well, if you look to the end of chapter 6, there's a very interesting quote. Chapter 6, verse 28 says, Daniel prospered during the reign of Darius and the reign of Cyrus the Persian. Now that verse mentions two names, the reign of Darius and the reign of Cyrus. So what's going on here? I think what you have is one person who goes by two different names. I think verse 28 should be translated, so Daniel prospered during the reign of Darius, that is, the reign of Cyrus. In other words, he was known as Cyrus, and he was also known as Darius. But that's not unusual. Already in the book of Daniel, we've seen several times people have two names. You remember the 3 Hebrew young people delivered from the fiery furnace. Their Hebrew names were Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. And their Babylonian names were Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Daniel also had two names. His Hebrew name was Daniel, but he also had a Babylonian name, Belteshazzar. So we've already seen a clear custom here of people having two names. I think probably Cyrus had more than one name. He was known as Cyrus, but he was also known as Darius. So there's not a problem here. It's just simply going by two names, one person. Very common in Bible times and very common in the book of Daniel. Hope you join us tomorrow for our next 5-minute Bible study. We'll look at how Daniel finds himself in the den of lions and how God miraculously delivers his servant. We will look at that in our next 5-minute Bible study in the book of Daniel.